Hello and welcome back. This video will be a basic guide addressing some of the more common complaints about PvP matches in Star Trek Online. These topics should be applicable to a wide variety of builds, and I still plan to do some more detailed build guides later. I'll cover each of these common issues one at a time for clarity. I'm recording this video on a 100% free-to-play account that was created around 6 months ago with very little playtime. The target ship is my main account, using a test build designed to give us a visual aid. Number 1, I can't target anyone through Placates. The first step is to know what it looks like when your ship is placated. It can be hard to tell in the heat of combat with so many visual effects, but when you are placated, the enemy ship will seem to go invisible, and your ship will have a sparkling effect around you. The color of the sparkle also tells you what type of placate it was. For example, if I'm hit by jam sensors, the target ship disappears and I see a blue sparkly pattern around my ship. This is telling me I need to use Science Team to clear this debuff. If my target uses auxiliary to structural with the placate buff active and I attack them, I'll get a yellow sparkly effect around me, which tells me to use Engineering Team. I was a little slow there, but it only lasts 4 seconds. Aux to Sif, fire, I'm placated, Engineering Team, no longer placated. I'm not a good enough player myself to activate the correct team during battle, so I have both Science and Engineering Team bound to the same key. But better players likely use the correct team for the right situation. Many times, even when you're placated, you're still able to see visual effects surrounding the enemy ship, so you can still use this to track them visually and stay on target. The other common placate is the personal space trait pseudo-submission. This placates me when I have the enemy targeted and they activate a hull heal. You'll notice I have a purple pattern around my ship. No team ability I've tested so far clears this, but luckily that placate is very short and the length of time I am placated also drops drastically as my control skill rises. There are 2 foolproof ways to get through these placates: boost morale from the command primary specialization, and narrow sensor bands, the Miracle Worker buff ability. Boost morale only lasts 4 seconds and can be used every 60 seconds, so it's probably better used to clear debuffs as a defensive measure, but narrow sensor bands is a great offensive ability in PvP for cutting through placates. Here, I'll target the enemy ship. It's got the Aux to Sif placate doff on and jam sensors, so I'll activate narrow sensor bands. So here is pseudo-submission, jam sensors, Aux to Sif placate. None of those actually placated me because I had the immunity to placates from narrow sensor bands on. There's another useful trick for dealing with the pseudo-submission trait, but that leads me to the next issue. Number 2, my weapons don't fire and I keep targeting pets and objects. For this one, we need to visit our options menu. Under the Controls tab, choose the option Only Attack if Target Selected, and set that to off. Now we're able to fire our weapons on target even if they're not selected. Basically, if there is any valid target within range, we will attack it no matter what. This goes hand in hand with our next change, where we'll set Never Auto-Target Objects and Never Auto-Target Pets to True, or On. Now, our ship will not automatically attack any pet summons. As I press Tab, it cycles between the enemy ship that I want to shoot, as well as their pets and summons. This includes summons from beacons like the Nimbus Pirate Distress Call. If I disable this, then I'm no longer targeting anything besides the enemy player ship that I want to shoot. And even when I don't have them targeted, if I fire my weapons, it only attacks the player ship, not any of their summons. As for the pseudo-submission placate from earlier, all we have to do is simply not target someone to fire at them except when using abilities that specifically require an enemy target, such as sensor scan. This can get tricky in larger fights where you need to focus fire on a single target, so it takes some practice for when to target someone or not and for how long. It's also important to note that placates such as jam sensors or the aux to sift off only apply to one attacker. This means if you and a teammate are focusing on the same target and you get placated, your teammate most likely did not get placated, so keep the pressure on and follow their lead until it is cleared and you can resume firing. The placate from pseudo-submission, however, affects everyone who has the ship targeted at the time it activates. If the battle is not as mobile, you can use pets and summons to mitigate this issue. Number 3. I can't target anyone through Exitus or Intel Team. This is probably the most complicated topic in this video, and I don't want it to get too in-depth. Intel Team is not a placate, it is a stealth ability. All player ships have a base perception value, which is the ability to target stealth ships. And this value by default is 5,000. Intel Team 3 provides the user with 4,680 stealth, and there is a formula we can use to calculate the range we can see them. The type of ship you are flying, any stealth boosting gear on the target ship, and both our ship's auxiliary power all play a role here, but the short version is, if you take the perception value, which is 5,000 plus our stealth detection rating visible in the stat screen here, in this case 335, so that's 5,335 minus the target ship's stealth value, then divide that number by 50 to see roughly the range we can target them. My target ship has roughly 4,925 stealth right now when I activate Intel Team 3, so we should be able to target it around 8.2 kilometers. So I'm going to close to 8.1 just to be sure. My target ship is going to activate Intel Team 3. I can still target and attack that ship. Now if I back up and I get outside of that range, I can no longer attack because I'm out of range. Now Intel Team is worn off and I can attack again. Many ships run Intel Teams back to back, which is what makes them so difficult to target. So to combat Intel Team, you have a few options. Number 1 is to raise your perception value. Science Captain Sensor Scan adds 500 perception. The Tachyon Detection Field Console, which you can grab from the Tier 3 Nebula for a little dilithium, adds 375, shown as 3.8%. And the Mission Reward Gem Hadar or Reputation Romulan Deflector add another 250, or 2.5% self-detection. Attack Pattern Lambda also adds a large amount of perception depending on the ability rank, but I don't have a ship with a pilot seat on this account to demonstrate with. Raising your auxiliary power also increases this further. Different ship types also have a higher modifier. Science ships, especially dreadnoughts, have the highest modifier for stealth detection rating. So I'll demonstrate here by activating, let me back even further out of range here. So at 9.73 kilometers, if that ship activates Intel Team 3, I can no longer attack. However, if I hit Sensor Scan, suddenly I have enough perception to attack. And let me just show you the self-detection rating is up to 835. If I hit Tachyon Detection, now we're up to 1200 some. So that's 6,216 perception, which effectively means I can target them outside of weapons range even. But obviously I won't be able to fire because weapons range is limited to 10 kilometers. The next best way, usually in concert with those perception boosts, is to use emergency power to auxiliary. This ability adds a perception radius. On the formula I mentioned before, this adds a straight value to the final result. So using our numbers from before, if 5,335 perception minus 4,925 stealth divided by 50 equals 8.2 kilometers, you can just add a flat 5 kilometers to that value for emergency powered auxiliary 3. That means my targeting range is 13.2 kilometers, even with no other abilities activated. You can always target a ship using Intel Team past 10 kilometers, so it doesn't matter past that point. But in the case of combating Exitus, it is more important because Exitus adds another 500 stealth we have to deal with over the base of Intel Team. The third way to deal with Intel Team in Exitus is to get closer. Your stealth detection rating falls off with distance. That's what the divided by 50 is applying at the end. The further you are away, the harder it is to target someone using Intel Team. I know at the speed of many PvP battles it's difficult, but it takes some practice and skill. The last option is to prevent them from activating Intel Team at all. Abilities like Gravity Well, Charged Particle Burst, or the Mata Raptor trait Overwhelming Force disables their ability to activate Intel Team for a certain amount of time. So here's the Mata Raptor trait. That little Charged Particle Burst explosion, if I look over on the other screen, I cannot activate Intel Team at all until now. So that's roughly the 7 seconds that it shows here on the tooltip. 7 seconds. Now, there is one issue with this. It says disables cloaking systems for 7 seconds. If they've already activated Intel Team, even if you're able to hit them and fire, it does not strip away the Intel Team buff. It's still there. That's maybe something that could be adjusted in a balance patch. Now, I won't lie to you here. I do think the trait Exitus Active Probat needs an adjustment. The 3 levels of Intel Teams as they stand alone are not a big deal. They're a nice way to mitigate damage and force the attacker to get closer to deal more damage. However, 500 stealth from Exitus is far too much and creates situations where ships that do not stack multiple perception boosting tricks are not able to attack even at 0.0 kilometers. I did some quick math using my formula, and my suggestion would be to drop Exitus stealth down to around 380, and critically, remove the perception debuff caused by attack pattern lambda. Many pilot/intel ships can effectively remove their ability to be targeted completely by cycling Intel Team and attack pattern lambda, and I'm not sure the game designers ever realized it could be used in this manner. Likely because Intel Team and lambda on its own is just annoying, but the Exitus trait came out later and makes it nearly game-breaking. Lowering Exitus to 380 and removing this perception debuff for lambda would still make Exitus a very good trait, forcing attackers to still get quite a bit closer than Intel Team alone, and it wouldn't break the PvE reasons for running Exitus, such as solo elite runs. The saving grace is that lambda is generally only applied to a single target. So in high-end PvP, Exitus ships are not that big of an issue because they can be defeated with a team effort. The problem is it creates a barrier that only serves to block players newer to PvP or those who don't necessarily have a team to work together with. So I'm going to equip Exitus on my target ship here. And let's just take a look at how that works. So Exitus on that ship is adding an extra 515 stealth when I activate an intel ability. So right now, at 5,335 perception, my target's Intel Team 3 is 4680 plus the passive 100 stealth from the skill tree and some other stealth benefits, and 500 more on top of that. So I'm estimating somewhere around 5,500. So I actually have less perception than this ship has stealth, which means even at 0.0 kilometers, I probably can't target it if it activates Intel Team 3 with Exitus on. And that is the case. I cannot fire at all. The ship is completely untargetable even at 0.0 kilometers, and that's before even being hit by attack pattern lambda. If you're a science captain and you target a ship and you can get off the sensor scan, it also subtracts 500 stealth from that ship, so that can really help you out as well. It's effectively like adding 500 stealth to your 500 perception to your own ship. Now, what about Intel Team 1? See, Intel Team 1, I can still target them at 0 kilometers. Let's see how far away I need to get. Alright, the buff wore off. Let's activate it again. Okay, Intel Team 1. I can still fire, there. Right around... I was right around 1.75 kilometers or somewhere thereabouts. Now remember I mentioned that emergency power to auxiliary adds a huge perception radius. So just for example, when I have this ship targeted and they activate Intel Team 3, I can no longer target them. If I hit emergency to aux, now I can target them. Let me just back way off here. I'm going to sit about 7 kilometers away, just a rough guess. And I'll wait for my abilities to recharge here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to activate Intelligence Team. So I have the Jem'Hadar deflector already equipped. And I'm just going to put this over to the side so that you can see my self-detection rating. I'm going to activate my Emergency Powered Auxiliary 3, as well as the Tachyon Detection Grid, and if necessary, Sensor Scan, not targeted, just on myself, so that I can see if I can target that ship out to 7 kilometers, even with Exitus and Intel Team 3. So, okay. Emergency Power to aux, Tachyon Detection Grid. The other ship activates Intel Team 3. Yes, I can target. I can target them through Exitus all the way out this far. Oh, I made a very good guess, because that's about the limit there. Emergency to Auxiliary 3, Tachyon Detection Field. Enemy ship activates Intelligence Team 3. I cannot target them. I hit Sensor Scan. Now I can. I'm not sure quite how far out. Pretty far. 9... It looks like I could target them all the way out to 10 kilometers there. So that's pretty good. Basically, on this build, as it stands right now with Emergency to aux 3, Tachyon Detection Grid, and Sensor Scan, this ship's Exitus is completely negated. And this is not even a science ship. If I were on a science ship, it'd be even higher. So granted, I did have to make some concessions to my build in order to combat Exitus, but it's essentially a game of chess, right? If I notice an enemy player using Exitus, you can see it right there on their buff bar. Well, as long as I can target them. Well, here's a quick trick for you. Let me get out of range. Remember I said outside of 10 kilometers, you can target a ship even if they activate Intel Team or Exitus. So if I'm out of combat range and someone activates Exitus, I can still target them and see it on their buff bar. So if I see this icon, I know that I need to bring Tachyon Detection Grid or Tachyon Detection Field, have Sensor Scan ready, Emergency to aux, whatever I need to do to combat this Exitus ship that I'm about to fight. If I don't see Exitus and I see the other team and no one's using Exitus, then I can slot something else, like maybe I'd swap to Engines 3 and Weapons 1 or Shields 1 or something like that. Maybe I don't need to bring this Tachyon Detection console since I don't need to target someone through Exitus. I can drop that. I can add Parasitic Ice or Makar's Vengeance or whatever I have. I don't have very many options on this character since it's free to play, so I only have whatever consoles I could get basically for free. But, part of PvP is adapting to the environment. You can't just take the exact same build in every single time and expect to do perfectly. Sometimes you have to adjust your build as necessary. There are countless times in combat where I've been in a fight, noticed something happening, evasived away, waited to go out of combat really quick, swapped a console or swapped a trait, and dove straight back into combat, just to improve my performance in that given situation. Number 5, I can't escape science holds like Parasitic Ice. Parasitic Ice is probably the most common hold at the moment, but there are many other slows such as those from Hostile Acquisition, Tractor Beams, and Flight Speed debuffs such as the one applied by Chronometric Inversion Field or Plasma Storm. Flight Speed debuffs are usually cleared by things such as Boost Morale, the command specialization ability I mentioned before, Fleet Maneuver Gamma console, and a few seconds of movement debuff immunity from abilities like Pilot Team or Attack Pattern Omega, and there's plenty of other options. I haven't done an exhaustive list. Parasitic Ice, however, will hold you in place for the full 20 seconds, unable to move, regardless of your control expertise or the attacker's control expertise. In this case, I'll show off a couple of readily available and inexpensive options for getting out of ice. The first option is the Warp Burst Capacitor. This jumps your ship ahead 6 kilometers and makes you briefly untargetable. So I'll hit myself with ice. I'm stuck, I can't move. Engines, healing, whatever. If I hit warp burst capacity, teleports me out, and I'm free to go. Since you're briefly untargetable, you can also use it to get out of trouble and regroup. This is available from the Constellation class, Tier 3 Heavy Cruiser Refit, available for dilithium. This one's also commonly called the Picard maneuver, since that's the name of the active ability, but the console itself is called Warp Burst Capacitor. The second option is the Fluidic Phase Decoupler, available from the Exchange or Lockbox console choice pack. Frequently, it's a very low price. I have had trouble selling these for 3 or 4 million. This console phases your ship out for 6 seconds and gives you a large bonus to flight speed so you can get away. While you're phased out, the effects of abilities in real space do not apply, although they might linger for a few moments. I'm going to demonstrate this one with both Parasitic Ice and Gravity Well, which is a common situation that you might encounter in PvP. So my attacking ship hits me with Parasitic Ice, I can't move, then usually Gravity Well and other things. You'll see that my cooldown abilities start cycling like that. It makes it hard to activate abilities. If I activate Fluidic Phase, I actually get out and none of the cooldown abilities activate on my bar, so I can get away. That's a really common way of escaping science hold situations. Another option specific to Parasitic Ice is to use something like Tractor Beam Repulsors or Photonic Shockwave, which pushes the ice away from you. As long as the ice is pushed far enough away from your ship, you're freed from its hold. So here I'll activate Repulsors, it pushes that Parasitic Ice off into the distance, and I'm free. Number 6. I die in one shot, or highest DPS build that gets the first shot off wins. The main reason this one comes up is due to a lack of understanding on building your ship for PvP. In PvE, usually the focus is on damage, adding some survivability as needed. In PvP, it's the opposite. We want to build a ship that is difficult to kill, then add damage and utility as we go. There are 2 main parts to this: resists and healing. Resists are easy. Traits or consoles that increase your ship's resistance are extremely useful, and luckily, there is a completely free option that is useful both from brand new all the way up to endgame PvP, the Pax Triburnium and Pax Monotanium alloy consoles. These drop from Discovery Reputation boxes. We prefer the Pax versions because they offer increased extra hull capacity, which adds even more survivability. Sometimes you may want to trade out which consoles you are using based on your enemies. If you're fighting science builds or torpedo boats, maybe Monotanium is worth keeping on. Against energy builds, maybe 2 Triburniums, or if you have a trait like Rhythmic Rumble to add some resists, you can slot another escape console or emergency console instead. As for healing, Protomatter tactical consoles available from the Fleet Colony are extremely effective. These are activated by both beam and cannon abilities, so that's why on a build like this one, I have both cannon scatter volley and beam overload slotted side by side. As I activate them, I'm doubling my chances every 15 seconds to activate the healing consoles. The consoles also couple well with the Hull Image Refractors console, which has a passive heal that allows up to 20 stacks of hull healing over 100% to temporary hull. Temporary hull does not benefit from resists, but it does stack very well, and I frequently see temporary hull numbers so high it more than doubles my ship's hull. This is why many times you might attack someone and never see their health bar drop below 100%. It's because you're only damaging their temporary hull, which you won't see in your targeting window. An honorable mention for budget builds is the starship trait Concealed Repairs. It's a very inexpensive starship trait that's readily available at the moment. This trait heals your ship for 33% of your hull over 10 seconds when placating an enemy or cloaking. It's not nearly as good as Protomatter TAC consoles, so it can't be relied on exclusively, but it's still quite effective. Also, make sure to always activate Threatening Stance when entering a PvP match. It can only benefit you and increase your hull capacity, especially since heals like concealed repairs and protomatter consoles are based on a percentage of your maximum hull. Coupled with that, the command specialization adds 15% more maximum hull, Miracle Worker adds 50% faster hull regen, and Strategist with Threatening Stance enabled increases your incoming hull healing. Here, while threatening, plus 20% incoming hull healing. And this applies to protomatter tac consoles and concealed repairs. So for the protomatter tac consoles, let me just demonstrate something really quick. My enemy ship now is a typical beam overload build that you might encounter in a PvP situation. If we look at my hull, I'm at 120,000. But say, over the heat of combat, I get attacked here and there. I'm slowly building up stacks of threatening. My hull capacity is now all the way up to 161,000. And there's still one more stack to go. Make that down to 150,000. That's because I'm using the competitive 3-piece and the 20% maximum hull bonus activated. So you can see my resists are nearly 60%, most of them across the board. I could probably get them a little higher. The 3-piece competitive set also has a nice ability here, when damaged by energy damage, add bonus energy damage resistance. So much like damage, how there's category 1 and category 2, bonus resist is added on top of these values. So you can actually break 75% with this 3-piece set here. And then I also have aux to SIF 3. And then if you were on a ship maybe with this much auxiliary power, maybe I should use the auxiliary power configuration. That would add another 20 damage resist, or advanced hull reinforcement, 10 bonus damage resist. There's lots of ways to get increased hull resist. So, and then of course in the specializations, I have Miracle Worker set, and in here, Miracle Worker here, when using a hull heal, it increases my damage resist by 30 for 10 seconds. And then there's also some traits. For example, I have redirected armor plating, which is free from a Sankethi mission. Which is another 30 damage resist when attacked anywhere besides the front. If I start activating Cannon Scatter Volley and Beam Overload, which are right here on my standard spam bar, I'm going to be generating temporary hull stacks, which is this icon right here. You can see I got 3 procs, so I'm already up to 15 stacks of temporary hull, which is a grand total of 129,000. Well, let's just keep it going. I only got 2 stacks that time, but still worth it. 161,000 hull, 169,000 hull. I mean, we're at more than double my ship's actual hull capacity right now in temporary hull. So on the other side, if I activate Beam Overload and narrow sensor bands to cut through that placate, and I fire, you know, that definitely hurt. It's still hurting me. I've got heals I can activate, but I'm very quickly healing up. And I'm trying to attack on the other from the other machine here, so you know, I'm trying as hard as I can here. I'm basically just pressing spacebar on both accounts at the same time, and I am not able to kill this ship standing still. Now, I'm sure if I did attack pattern alpha, or if I had a teammate helping me, I might be able to kill it. Maybe a well-timed engineering team there or something. But on this build, I also have the molecular inversion, which I just activated. You can see now I'm getting a lot of missed shots. It's hard for that enemy ship to target me. I can activate this console, or even Hull Image Refractors itself, which is going to cloak me for a moment. But it gives me a lot of healing. I'm suddenly healing back up, and I'll let it get into the, you know, I'll let it get into the temporary hull range a little bit, hopefully. Still holding on. There we go. I finally died. But I mean, that was a long time to stay in combat. And my attacking ship, I mean, I've got SAD, I've got narrow sensor bands, attack pattern lambda 3, cold-hearted, weapon emitter overdrive. I mean, this is a this ship is a very high-end top tier build, so it does a ton of damage. So I hope this video helps someone out who may be interested but frustrated with PvP. It can be a very rewarding experience and a ton of fun. It feels great to get better and try new builds and gear out in a totally different scenario compared to PvE. It's also great to find a good group to play with. Testing builds and running private PvP matches in the evenings is one of my favorite things to do in this game. My own fleet has a Discord with PvP resources, and we organize matches there, and anyone is welcome to join. You don't even have to be a fleet member. Thank you for watching.